Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give it a few minutes, well, not a few minutes, just a moment to let the numbers ramp up. We're almost at the registration count, so we'll be ready to get you guys going in 1 second. Okay, let's get things going. Welcome, everyone. This is our first webinar of 2026. We're hosting today in conjunction with Microsoft and TD Synnex. This is also part one of a two-part series, which is designed to provide an insight into how Microsoft 365 services can support you and your business in increasing productivity and reducing risk. By way of introduction, I'm Gavin Lee. I'm Head of Sales and Managed Services here at Concord Technology Group. And today I'm joined by Hannah Hammond, Concord's Group Marketing Manager, and the guy that everyone's here to see, Ed Dale.
Okay,
sorry.
Hang
on a second, Ed. So, sorry, I was just there's some people still trying to get into the meeting. 1 sec. Right, so 2025, it's a big year for Concord. Not only did it mark 40 years in business for us, which is a massive milestone in itself, it also saw a 30% increase in our revenues that were directly linked to Microsoft Modern Workplace subscriptions. This increase is down to several factors, but primarily it's due to the amazing collaboration between our customers and the Concord team. And these collaborations have resulted in high value returns for our clients, clawing back significant volumes of time and energy in areas of compliance, data protection, and general risk reduction strategies. I just want to reiterate that Concord is not here to transact licenses. We're here to maximize the return for our clients from their investment in every vendor platform that we work with. As part of today, Hannah will be coordinating a Q&A throughout the session, and we'll also be recording today's session too. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ed. He's the guy that everyone's here to see. So let's get things going. Over to you, Ed.
Smashing. Thank you very much, Gavin, and good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for giving up some of your important time to join us today, all to talk around why M365 Business Premium for built-in security. Now, just a bit of a small confession just before we start. I'm just on the tail end of a cold, so I might sound a little bit bunged up. Hopefully, you can understand me clearly. But human virus is quite easy to catch. One of the focuses of today is to make sure the more digital kind of threats, viruses, M365 Business Premium is there to help us. And how exactly? Well, we've got a few topics which we are going to cover in the time that we have. So we're going to look at how M365 can increase security confidence, enable secure access and protect identities, defend against cyber threats and data loss, and secure and managing devices. We will have a little bit of time at the end where we are going to just give a quick overview on Defender for Business. We're not going to go into everything on Defender for Business because, as Gavin said at the beginning, this is a one of two parts. We'll be going into Defender for Business in a bit more detail in the next session. But I do just want to start off by talking around the current landscape and really how much the world has changed, especially over the last 5 years. Well, 6 years now. I mean, since the COVID pandemic, that really transformed the world in which we work. It made remote working the norm, working from a multitude of different devices, different locations, different networks. And whilst for the most part, this has all been an experience which has been welcomed by organizations, it has brought about significant challenges. And one of the main challenges is, of course, cyber threats. And it is something which is everyone's problem. A lot of the times with cyber threats and cyber crimes, we may see that in the news it's always some large corporation, some large global conglomerate. But that doesn't mean that they are only focusing on big businesses. SMBs, smaller businesses, SMEs as well are all targets. Again, this is everyone's problem. Cybercrime, as Arand Eswaran said, he's the CEO of Veeam. He gave a great talk a little while ago, last year, talking around how cybercrime is a business and that business is booming. And it really hasn't been a great year for cyber crimes and threats in the UK. When we look at M&S, JLR, Co-op, Harrods, all as examples, there was some major issues that occurred, which have cost UK organisations millions, tens of millions of pounds. But again, just because we're focusing on some of the large examples that we've seen in the UK, that doesn't mean this isn't happening 1,000 times every single day to small businesses up and down the country. The fact of the matter is, if you've got something that's valuable to you, well, it's valuable to them, the cyber criminals that will use whatever means they have at their disposal to separate you from your money, your data, whatever it might be. So what do? Well, you need to protect yourself. But how? How do you choose from the multitude of cybersecurity solutions that are out there to help you? I mean, this is one of the concerns that we see, especially when it comes to protecting organizations, is a lot of businesses are piling up just far too much cost and complexity into their organizations. Now, some people would say you need to diversify your approach to cybersecurity to ensure full coverage. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes diversifying your security portfolio too much can add to things such as gaps in visibility, a security environment which is expensive, it is difficult to manage, because again, how can you be sure that this is going to work with this and this talks to that and is compatible with this and this? It becomes an absolute nightmare. And this is one of the key areas of M365 Business Premium. The fact that everything is built into the product. It is all built into the SKU and it's all designed to work together, because this best of breed model, it's broken. We have seen far too many organizations that, again, have been continually layering best of breed point solutions to address emerging security needs. And that has caused organizational security to break down, because we see situations where tools aren't being integrated because it's too expensive or it's too complex. That leads to gaps in visibility. We see more alerts to triage than teams can actually handle, and constantly having to retrain people on your new tools and your new solutions is a constant challenge. One of the things we absolutely want to reduce within your organizations is that cost and that complexity. And just one thing on the cost. You know, some of the solutions we talk about are only maybe a couple of quid per user per month. But again, scale that up over 50 or 100 users. Suddenly one solution that's only a couple of pounds per user per month could be costing you potentially hundreds of pounds every single month for one thing. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. Now, Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, said a little while ago that M365 empowers you to be able to do more with less. The fact that you don't have to be spending loads of money every single month to have a secure and compliant organization, that you can rely on the tools that you've already got and still meet those high standards of security and compliance, essentially helping organization meet some of the main challenges the business need to meet. Not just, again, being able to work and collaborate more effectively, but again, maintaining high standards of security and reducing costs. Because M365 Business Premium is, for many, a one-stop solution. You can see this is just showing an example of all the M365 SKUs as they currently are. Business Standard, very popular one. Some of you may be on Business Standard. If you are, again, fantastic SKU. It has all the cloud services, all the desktop apps, but it doesn't include the comprehensive security for things such as data and device management that Business Premium has. And we'll talk more about what you get included in Business Premium in just a moment. Now, some people may be skeptical about this, thinking, well, you know, how secure is M365 Business Premium? Well, one of the ways that Microsoft approaches security and security challenges is looking at a layered approach when it comes to security. It's not just one thing. When we talk about security in M365, it's again that layered approach. When we talk around enabling and securing identities, defending against cyber threats and data loss, managing and securing devices, there are multiple things that sit underneath everything within M365 Business Premium. Again, ensuring that you and your organization are meeting some of the highest standards of security and compliance. And these are some of the features that you actually get included with M365 Business Premium. So some of you may be familiar with some of these tools. You've got things such as Intune, information protection, conditional access, a license for Azure Virtual Desktop. I'm amazed how many people don't know that M365 Business Premium actually comes with a license for AVD included. We're not going to talk about that one today, but again, still an interesting one to know. Defender for Business, Defender for Office 365, and Cloud App Security. All of this included in M365 Business Premium, and is only a few quid more than M365 Business Standard, the one just below this. Now, that illustrates phenomenal value with M365 Business Premium. The fact that you're getting all of this included in Business Premium for only a few quid more than what you would spend on Business Standard. Now, do you think that you would be able to go out and buy enterprise grade equivalents of all of this for less than, let's say, £6 a month for all of that? Well, I'll answer that for you. You can't. Again, this just showing, the phenomenal value that M365 Business Premium brings to customers. And all of this stuff was built and designed from the ground up. All of this stuff was designed to work together. So it addresses two of those main things we mentioned earlier, cost and complexity. Cost is addressed because it's included as part of your M365 Business Premium SKU. And the complexity is addressed because, well, all of this stuff was literally built and designed to work together. There's no having to shoehorn solutions, trying to make sure that this works with this or this works with that. Everything was designed to work together out the box. So again, cost and complexity eliminated. Two of the main enemies of modern security within organizations. And that really does bring about, the benefits of Business Premium. Comprehensive and easy to use, it can help reduce costs, and everything that's included in M365 Business Premium is enterprise grade technology. Now, this is quite an important thing, and I'm going to talk more about this in just a moment, but everything that's included in M365 Business Premium, a lot of the security features and functionality have actually been taken from or are based on security features and functionality that is found in M365 E5. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, E5 is the top singing, all dancing enterprise SKU. So a lot of the features and functionality from E5 have actually been taken and reworked and put into Business Premium. This means that your organization can enjoy the same levels of security and compliance as some of the world's largest organizations. So on that topic, let's talk around how M365 Business Premium can increase security confidence. Well, one of the things that we've absolutely seen is a huge rise in ransomware attacks over the last year, around a 300% year-on-year increase, with half of that, 50% of that, being targeted at SMBs, at smaller businesses. Now, why? Why has this gotten so crazy over the last few years? Well, remember earlier when I showed that slide of the CEO of Veeam, and he said that cybercrime is big business. Well, he wasn't lying. It really is big business. In fact, if you were to be armed with a credit card and access to the dark web, you would be able to go on and buy any number of attacks you wanted. And here's just some examples of attacks being offered as a service. This is what we are all up against. This is what we are all battling right now, whether we are big or small businesses. this is a challenge again that we all have. Because look at this. Anyone can go onto the dark web and rent an attacker for 250 bucks and they can do whatever they want. You could get a ransomware kit for $66 and then 30% of the ransom that you get, for example. Look at this. You can buy compromised devices. Look at this. For a PC, 13 cents for an already compromised PC, and what, 82 cents for a compromised mobile device. Absolutely shocking. And we're talking dollars and cents here. I mean, look at this. Stolen passwords, 97 cents for 1,000 stolen passwords. Or if you want to be thrifty and go down a more kind of Costco approach to your cybercrime, 150 bucks for 400 million stolen passwords. And like I said, we're talking, literally dollars and cents, but this is a multi-trillion dollar a year industry. It's absolutely shocking. This is what we are up against. And, is Microsoft even in a position to help protect us against this onslaught? Well, the answer is yes. Microsoft is actually doing, quite a lot when it comes to protecting us against cybercrime. Not only, it comes as no surprise to anyone on this call that Microsoft is incredibly rich. They've got a lot of money to invest into security research and development, but they also have some incredibly smart tools that are able to analyze data from Microsoft services. Now just for a moment, think for a second about how many Microsoft products and services are out there in the world right now. And I don't just mean the commercial stuff, consumer as well. Think about the millions of people that are playing Xbox right this second. Think about the billions of people who are using M365, the billions of people who are using Azure, the hundreds of people using Bing. All of these people using these solutions, what you may not know is that all of these products and solutions are sending back telemetry information around the global threat landscape. This is one of the things that Microsoft really has. It has a tool that gives Microsoft a view, global optics over what the threat landscape across the world looks like. This way, Microsoft can know what some of the trending threats are and proactively put security in place before things become a major issue. And it's because of this that Gartner, Forrester, the IDC have all put Microsoft products and services as some of the best secure solutions that are available today. Now, again, this is something which sometimes is overlooked. There's a lot of time when people look at M365, they think, oh, it's Word, it's PowerPoint, it's Excel. Well, it is also, Microsoft is actually a bona fide security company. This is something, which Microsoft is incredibly proud of. And again, using that security expertise and knowledge to build products to help keep organizations secure. So let's have a look at some of those features. Let's look at some of the things that M365 Business Premium can do to help keep you and your organization safe. The first one is around enabling secure access and protecting identity. Now, I believe the chat box is open. Yes, it is. Would anyone like to take a wild guess at what is always the weakest link in any organization's security landscape? What do you reckon? What is always link, the first domino to fall? Absolutely correct. Yeah. It's the end user. It's the person. It's the human. We're the ones that make the mistakes. We're not infallible a lot of times because, again, we make mistakes. We get to do things such as choose our own password, for example. And here you go, for a bonus point, does anyone want to take a wild stab at still at the end of 2025 was one of the most used passwords in the world? Password, yeah, well done, Ricky. Yeah, Ricky, James, Rob, yeah, you all got it. Yeah, you're absolutely. How depressing is that? That in the 21st century, 2026, password or a variation on that, password 1, 2, 3, is still one of the most popular passwords. How bad is this? Well, because of all of this, it's a little wonder that 80% of network breaches are due to weak or stolen credentials. So this is why one of the features of M365 Business Premium, as comes as no surprise to anyone, it's MFA. Now, I'm not going to insult everyone on here by explaining what MFA is, multi-factor authentication. We all use MFA in some shape or form, maybe with our banking or something. But, in a nutshell, MFA is there to make sure the password cannot be that single point of failure, that without some kind of secondary device or some secondary information, the password on its own, cannot just be used. But this is one of the simplest and most effective things. I'm sure all of you on this call, you're probably all using MFA within your organizations, again, which is fantastic, because it is one of the simplest and the most effective things you can do. In fact, 99.9% of identity-based attacks can be stopped in their tracks just by implementing MFA alone. So, obviously MFA, we know this, but there are other features within M365 Business Premium that MFA also tags onto. Things like conditional access, for example. Now, again, some of you will be familiar with conditional access. This is to make sure that the people who are signing in are the people they claim to be. Most of us, as I mentioned at the beginning, most of us work remote nowadays. Maybe a couple of days in the office, a couple of days, working remotely from home or, wherever you might be out on a client site. We all need to make sure that, whoever is signing in and accessing resources within our organization, that they are the person they claim to be. MFA is a great start, but we can take it a step further with things like conditional access. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, let's say, for example, I want to sign in on my laptop into Office, for example. Now, without conditional access, I would just use my username and password and there we go, we gain access. But with conditional access, what's going to happen now is that I need to meet certain conditions before my access is granted. These conditions, again, you can customize what these conditions look like, but it could be things like your location. Where in the world are you signing in from? Is this a trusted location, like a trusted IP address? Maybe you're an organization that only works in the UK, so there should be no reason anyone signing in from an IP address outside of UK borders, for example. You could block traffic from certain locations, if you want to, maintain security, you can block certain regional IP addresses. So again, you have the ability to do this. You can also set conditions around the device. Maybe I only want people accessing internal infrastructure on their assigned corporate device. I don't want them accessing it on their personal devices, for example. So again, I can enforce a policy that makes sure that people only work on their company issued laptops, for example. Effectively, what this is doing, it is giving me full control over who, what, and how people can access internal infrastructure within my organization. And again, you can go as hard as you want on this. For example, if you've got one of your staff, maybe they've got to go on a business trip over to sunny Spain or something like this. Whilst they're over in Spain, they try and sign in to do some work. Obviously, they are now signing in from a location which is unfamiliar. So how do we make sure that this person is the person they claim to be? Well, this is where MFA comes back in. MFA will double check that person to make sure they are the person they claim to be, and presuming MFA is satisfied, access would be granted. So we can see how MFA also works hand in hand with other features to make sure our organizations and access is kept safe and secure. Talking about cyber threats and data loss, they say, I read a statistic a little while ago. It was quite shocking. I think it was something ridiculous, like 93% of ransomware attacks all began with a phishing email. That sounds about right. We're all told, don't click on the link. If somebody you don't recognize sends you a link or an attachment, there's always that thing at the top of your email saying, don't click on this. Has that stopped people from clicking on links? Of course it hasn't. Mistakes, again, still occur. We've seen lots of examples of, attackers using more advanced techniques, email spoofing and what have you, to trick people into thinking something is legitimate when it isn't. So this is where things such as Defender for Office 365 comes in. Now, Defender for Office 365 is a feature which is designed to stop you from clicking on links that could lead you to malicious websites or, ransomware attacks, that sort of thing. Effectively, what happens? Let's say, for example, that one of you receives an email. You haven't had your morning coffee, so you're not paying full attention. You click on the link. Now, with Defender for Office 365, it does open the link. It will open it, but it opens it in an isolated virtual environment. It opens it in like a detonation chamber, effectively. It opens up in this secure virtual environment, and then the AI-powered attachment scanning goes to work, looking for anything suspicious about this link that you've just clicked. Is it trying to do something weird, like run a script, or trying to install something? Some things that websites shouldn't normally do. And if it detects anything that it doesn't like the look of, this great big red warning message is going to flash up on the screen telling you that whatever it is you've just tried to do, it's dodgy and to stop it right now. This is good. This means that what could have been a potential ransomware attack and you scoring a massive own goal for your business, you have just been saved from that potentially happening. Now, this doesn't stop here either, because when this flashes up telling you that whatever it is, for you to carry on with your day, all you do is just close the tab and you just get on with your day. But IT administrators will receive a notification telling them that at 9 a.m. Ed clicked on a link that got this response from Defender for Office 365. They'll be able to investigate. Where did this come from, this email? Was Ed the only person that received this email? Was this a one-off, or is this a potentially larger spear phishing attack that is actually happening at the moment? We actually saw, I think it was back in the pandemic days, AstraZeneca, one of the pharmaceutical company that was working on a vaccine, they were actually hit with a targeted spear phishing attack against their business, similar to what I was just describing. But because of Defender for Office 365, AstraZeneca were very quickly able to understand that this wasn't a one-off. Multiple people had been receiving these dodgy emails. They understood what was happening. They were able to block the senders. They were able to delete the dodgy emails that were in their Exchange server. Even people that hadn't opened these emails yet, they were able to remove that and obviously put themselves on high alert for the next 24 to 48 hours. The main thing around this is it's not just around protecting your staff around these types of attacks. It's also about giving IT administrators the visibility that they need to better protect their own borders. Okie doke. On the topic of data, this is quite an important one. This is information protection, formerly known as Azure Information Protection, or AIP. So you might, if you ever see stuff online talking about AIP, that's what this is talking about. But this is often something which is overlooked by businesses. Sometimes we see situations where people who are looking at being more secure, they get too blinded and taken up with thinking about ransomware and viruses, that sort of thing. They don't necessarily think about the threats that could, come from within an organization. And I don't necessarily mean malicious threats, but, accidental mistakes that could happen. I'm pretty sure that there are people on this call. I think, actually, I'd say all of us, we have all once in our career sent the wrong email to the wrong person. We've all done that. Maybe some of us, it was worse. Maybe we sent a sensitive attachment to the wrong person. Unfortunately, leaking data completely by mistake, but it does happen. So this is one of the things that I definitely want to address. When we think about security, we also need to think about our data, our documents. For many organizations, what's more important than your data? It is everything your organization is. It's your plans, it's your finances, your people. In some cases, it's your products. This stuff needs to be protected. So Azure Information Protection is a great way of doing this. Now, again, all of this stuff that we're talking about comes free with M365 Business Premium. So even if you've got Business Premium already and you're not using some of these features, speak to the team at Concord. They can help you get started with this. But information protection. Let's say that we've got this enabled. Now, information protection works across things such as Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook. You'll know when you're using it because across the top of the screen, you get this sensitivity banner. Now, this sensitivity banner, again, you can customize this however you want, but you have certain policies like personal, public, general, confidential, highly confidential. And what this allows you to do is if I was working on a document which quite literally has secret written all over it, I could select a confidential policy on that document. Now, that confidential policy could mean that this document is only accessible and viewable by members of my organization. So just imagine that all of you on this call, you work for my company. And I want to share this document with all of you, but I don't want it being shared outside of the business. So I can mark it as confidential. This gives you the ability to look and view the document. But if you then try to send it to someone else and they try and open it, they would just get an error message telling them that they do not have, they cannot view this document effectively. This is the cool thing about this, because when you assign a policy, it actually embeds the policy into the metadata of the document itself. So the security travels with the data. It's very, very cool indeed. And we can even take it to a next level. For example, with a policy like highly confidential, again, you can configure these policies to however you want them to be. But with highly confidential, as an example, I could not just limit who this document can be viewed by, members of my business, but I could also then limit what people can do with the document once they have it in their possession. For example, I might not want you to maybe save a copy of the document. Maybe I want you to look at the document, read it, learn it, but I don't want you saving it. So I can disable saving, copying and pasting to a USB stick. I could disable printing, for example, showing the document on a Teams call or a WebEx or anything like this. So it gives me that ability to really lock down what people can and can't do with the data itself. And just in case you're thinking, screenshot, could I screenshot the data? Well, that's also something we can block. Taking a screenshot or a screen snip of the data is something that, again, we can stop. And if you tried to do it, if you tried to print it, if you tried to screenshot it, if you tried to copy and paste it to a USB stick, well, you may not realize that every time you do it, A, it's not going to work, but B, your computer turns supergrass and sends me notifications to tell me what you just tried to do to that document. So I get notifications saying, hey, did you know that this person's trying to screenshot it? They're trying to do this, they're trying to do this. And, it's only a matter of time before I figure out that, hey, you're just going to figure out, just take a photo of the screen with your mobile phone. So what can I do? Well, I can actually use information protection policies to actually claw back your access to that data. The next time you try and open the document, you will get an error message telling you that you don't have the authority to view this document. So this gives us a lot of control over our data. And this is an important one, especially when we talk about data. Some of you on this call may be considering Copilot in the not too distant future. Maybe some of you are already having that conversation. Maybe some of you are looking at AI. And let's remember, AI, it's all about data. AI is all about data, nothing else. So you need to make sure that you've got the ability to lock down data and secure it. So only certain people can use, access, all of this sort of stuff. Things like Copilot respect the security policies that are already in place. So things like information protection, everything else we've discussed, Copilot respects that when you deploy it. So doing some of this stuff, or again, for some of you that are looking at getting Copilot in the not too distant future, I'd say this is absolutely something worth doing. It can take a little bit of a while to get all this stuff set up, but again, this is where the great team at Concord come in. They can help get all of this smoothed out for you. And one last thing, just whilst we're talking about some of the less common sides of security. I don't know if anyone's here familiar with the term shadow IT. Is anyone here familiar with that term? No, no one knows shadow IT. Okay, well, shadow IT is quite simply when somebody within an organization utilizes applications or services that are not sanctioned by the IT department. It's as simple as that. It could be, for example, imagine I came to work for your company, and on my first day in the business, I turn around to you and say, I imagine most of you use things like OneDrive and SharePoint. But imagine on my first day at your company, I turn around to you and I say, yeah, I don't really like using OneDrive or SharePoint. I used to use Google Drive back at my last company. So yeah, I'm just going to carry on using Google Drive. I've got my own Google Drive account. I'm just going to carry on using that. I'd save all the customer information into this. I'd assume you'd all see a massive problem with this. Suddenly I'm using my personal Google storage for saving corporate company information. Obviously, that just isn't on. Absolutely not on at all. Because, first of all, I'm extracting data from the organization, which is a violation of GDPR. Also, let's say because I'm a moron, I've saved all this company information into my personal Dropbox or my personal Google Drive, and that Google Drive gets hacked and gets breached and all that information gets leaked. Who do you think the GDPR folk are going to hold responsible? Me for putting all that stuff in my Google Drive, or the company? Who do you reckon? Who do you reckon is going to get the supreme slapdown from the GDPR folk? Well, it is, of course, the company. The company, Simon, thank you very much. Yeah, the company, they would be held responsible because the company was responsible for securing that data in the first place. So this is the problem with shadow IT. The big problem being, how do you know? How do you know someone in the organization isn't using certain applications or services that could be deemed as a risk on their corporate devices? Sorry, one second, I just need to do a cough, sorry. It's a quick swig of water, excuse me. There we go, I'm ready to rock and roll now. But yes, so this is where cloud app discovery comes in. It does give organizations, that visibility over the apps being used within their organization. Now, there's a lot going on this slide, but let me just draw you down to this part here. See where it says, we've got discovered apps. Everything in green, that's sanctioned. Everything in red is unsanctioned. So I can see here at a glance all the applications that are being used and all the applications which are unsanctioned in the organization. And I can look at these by specific applications. I can look at these by IP addresses or specific users. But this is going to give me a heads up into applications and services that are being used within my business that are not authorized. And that will allow me to make an educated decision on what we do next, whether it's something that maybe we buy a license for this thing, or maybe I just need to do some training with my staff. Everyone's using Dropbox. Well, maybe I need to do some training to show people how to use SharePoint or OneDrive. It can be an incredibly useful tool, especially getting a good understanding of where certain risks and threats possibly are. The next is securing and managing devices. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with Intune. Now, Intune is the umbrella term for device management within the Microsoft ecosystem. Underneath that umbrella, there are certain areas like Endpoint Manager, for example. So within Endpoint Manager, I've got two different options here. So I've got MDM, which is mobile device management, and MAM, which is mobile application management. Now, again, both MDM and MAM can be used for securing devices, whether these are laptops or mobile phones. I'm going to use mobile phones as my example for this. But what is the difference here between MDM and MAM, for example? Well, let's start off by just quickly talking about MDM. So, sorry, excuse me, sorry. My throat has done so well through this, and just now towards the end, it's starting to fall apart a bit. So, mobile device management. Now, why would we use this particular flavor of endpoint manager? Well, MDM would typically be used for an organization which is securing assets which belong to the company. Again, let's say, for example, you will work for my company and I've given you all company iPhones. Now, those iPhones, they belong to me, the organization. So I would use MDM to secure those devices because that gives me, the company owner, full control over those devices, which is fair because those devices, they belong to the business. So for example, if your device was lost or stolen, I've got the ability to erase the device or maybe just lock it until you find it. I can control what applications you can and can't install on the device. I can enforce stricter security policies onto the device if needs be. But the fact is, I've got full control over that device. And we've seen stuff like this happen. Some of you might remember a little while back, there was that whole thing with government ministers in the UK having TikTok on their government phones. A lot of kind of like concerns around, China using TikTok to spy on government ministers. So there was this blanket ban for government employees to have TikTok on government handsets. Well, how did they enforce that? Well, they enforced it with this. That's how they did it. They rolled out a policy which effectively blocked TikTok. So again, if you want to make sure that only business applications are being used, this is how you could do that. Now, this is all well and good for devices that belong to the business. But let's be honest, a lot of devices, whether we're talking laptops or mobile phones, a lot of people subscribe to the BYOD model nowadays. A lot of people use their own personal phone or their own personal devices for work. So you can't really, I wouldn't want to enroll my device into such a strict policy. The iPhone that I bought, I wouldn't want my company having the ability to erase all of my data on a whim. I wouldn't want my company telling me what applications I can and can't have on my own personal device. And Microsoft agrees, which is why we have got MAM. Now, the fundamental difference between Mobile Device Manager and Mobile Application Manager is that with the case of MAM, it is not the device that is being managed. It is the applications on the device that are being managed. Let me just visualize what I mean by this. So let's say, for example, this is our mobile phone that we are now going to enroll into MAM. Now, when we do that, that creates what we call a multi-identity policy. Now, that's just a very fancy way of saying data separation, separating our personal applications from our corporate applications. It's worth mentioning at this point that when a device is enrolled into MAM, the organization has no visibility over the personal applications. The only thing the organization can see is the managed apps, the apps that belong to the business. But the whole idea of this MAM policy is to give the best of both worlds. I've got my personal device, I can still use whatever applications I want, and I can still do work. If I was to suddenly decide, hey, I don't want to work for this company anymore, and I phone up my boss one morning, I say, hey, it's Ed, I'm not coming back, I quit, and they say, yeah, that's fine, we didn't like you anyway. They can put in a very quick call to the IT department, and they can just delete my managed applications, leaving all of my personal stuff completely fine and untouched, which again is absolutely brilliant. It means that, again, I do have that best of both worlds. Now, you might think having all of this stuff on the same device, surely this is risky, right? Because what would happen if I receive an email and that email contains a Word document? Now, I can save that Word document into my corporate OneDrive. Of course I can, because it all exists as part of the managed applications. But what do you think would happen if I then tried to save this Word document, maybe down here, into my Google Drive? Do you think that's going to work? Well, The answer is no. It's not going to work. The main thing around this mobile application management policy is that any data that has come through a managed app cannot be stored in a non-managed application. Again, just ensuring that corporate data remains on the device. I can already hear some of you thinking, screenshot? Can we screenshot? Yeah. Well, you can, but do remember that information protection policies do apply to mobile phones. Remember we were speaking earlier about how your device can grass you up if you start doing things to documents that are unauthorized. Well, that still works here. If you start screenshotting data that is secure data that does have an information protection policy around it, you might find yourself having a uncomfortable conversation. Okay. And lastly, just coming into Defender for Business. Like I said, we're not going to go too deep into this one. We're just not going to go too deep into this one here because we will be doing another session where we're going to talk around this in a little bit more detail. But let me just point out the Defender for Business is not a single thing. It's actually a multitude of tools. Sorry, excuse me 1 second. So it's actually, yeah, like I said, a multitude of tools that again sit under that umbrella. And we're going to talk more in the next session around what these actually do. But it breaks down into these key areas of things such as threat and vulnerability management, helping to reduce our attack surface area, offering next-gen protection with behavioral sensors and lots of other cool stuff, endpoint detection and response tools, and one of my favorites, auto investigation and remediation. Some incredible tools. One of the cool things about Defender for Business is it's based very closely on M365 E5's Defender for Endpoint. Like I said earlier, E5 being the all singing, all dancing M365 package, the one that's used by, some of the world's largest organization. Defender for Business is basically the same thing as this. The only thing you don't get with Defender for Business is access to Microsoft Threat Experts, which is kind of like a security concierge service. But we can add that, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later.
Ed, just before you go on,
Yes.
I've seen a couple of questions regarding cloud apps and MAM. Are you able to potentially pass some comment on those that have just been published in the chat?
Yeah, let me have a look. Regarding cloud apps, is it possible for Defender for Endpoint to supply data as a source? Yeah. Regarding the cloud apps, is it possible for Defender for Endpoint to supply data as a source? I'll need to, Ricky, I'll need to double check on that one for you, I'm afraid. Off the top of my head, I'm not too sure. Um, um, so multiple email accounts on the Outlook app. It should only work for the account that it's applied to. Again, I need to double check because there has been some changes to that. I'll tell you what. Let me take some of these questions and because some of these separate Outlook between work and personal. That's absolutely correct. But let me take some of these, Gavin. Let me take some of these, and I'll come back to you if that's all right.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okie doke. Just one thing I wanted to just going into the next session on Defender for Business is that it is an EDR tool. It's an endpoint detection response of EDR and XDR. Technically, it isn't an antivirus solution. There are more traditional antivirus solutions out there, which again they fail against unknown threats. They constantly need to be updated with latest antivirus definitions. One of the advantages with Defender for Business is A, it's included as part of M365 Business Premium, and B, it is cloud powered. Remember those 62 trillion threat signals we mentioned that Microsoft is collecting every single day from Microsoft products and services around the world? All of that is feeding back into Defender for Business, again, making it a cloud-powered, always up-to-date solution. And every time someone somewhere in the world uses a Microsoft product, whether it's Defender for Business or, Defender for Office 365, any of the Defender products, the way that they used it, the way they solved their problem just gets fed back into this ever-growing repository of data. So it's an ever-growing solution, but we are going to talk more about that on the next session. Okay. So there are some questions in the chat. I'm going to have to just double check on some of these, Gavin. So I'll come back to you on those. But Gavin, I'm going to throw it back over to you.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks a lot. Really, really informative session. And for those that have met with us historically or are currently consuming services from Concord, you've seen that they follow the pattern where, we've gone through a period of adoption, introducing various different security or productivity gains for our clients. As Ed said, there's a couple of questions here that we can't answer right here and now, but we'll make sure we make a note and come back to you guys. And ultimately as well, for any supplementary questions you have around Concord's capabilities in this space, please do not hesitate to contact the customer relationship manager here at Concord. Again, thank you, everyone. It's our first webinar of the year. It's really informative stuff, Ed, and I'm really, really excited about what part 2 is going to bring on the 10th of February. So we look forward to seeing everybody on that session. Hannah will be forwarding some survey forms, so we really appreciate your feedback from today. And again, I want to reiterate that we do a lot of good work in this area. We see massive growth as an organization. We've helped a lot of people save a lot of time, a lot of money, and reduce a lot of risk within their organizations. So if anyone's got any additional questions that they want to raise, please feel free to do so. We'll try and cover them off the best that we can. I think something's coming through now. All right, we've got some answers. But what we can do is we can leave the chat open for the moment. And if anyone's got anything specific that they want to ask, please do so, and we'll do our best to answer those now. Yeah, okay, there seems to be some general consensus on here, as well around, if you're implementing the MAM policies, there's essentially multiple instances of Outlook that are being used within that, one that sits under a corporate managed instance, and then the other being under the, under personal management. One other thing that's worth saying as well, without getting the sales hat on here as well, is that we're seeing a lot of instances as well where these getting my sales hat on, we're seeing a lot of instances where it integrating a lot of these components as well as resulted in increased noise or activity for our clients. So we run a number of different tools that are designed to complement some of the designed to complement tools, within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, where we're feeding telemetry directly onto our operations team. This also as well is that we can benefit from various different baselines that we're seeing across, industry standard, and ultimately as well across our tenants. So clients that are utilizing our tenancy management service will be familiar of how our teams have proactively ingested data from the tenant and helped organizations, avoid potential security risks, and also as well how that telemetry data is fed into our customer service and technical review sessions, or CS&TRs, where we've been able to work with organizations through, a period of incremental gains that they've been able to see, within the compliance, security, or information management space. So again, I'd actively encourage you to speak with your customer relationship executive or manager here, to learn more about that. And again, I'm seeing some of the stuff coming through from the chat. I think we need to get a definitive, response on the MAN policies. There seems to be some conflicts there that we'll need to confirm for you guys. Live TV at its best, right? So we've got a couple more minutes left. Is there any additional questions that anybody wants to raise? Okay. Well, Ed, thank you. Thank you for doing that. As I say, we're looking forward to the next session on the 10th. Hope we can all see you on the next one. And again, thank you to everybody who's attended today. I know you're all extremely busy people, and thank you for taking time out of your day to support this webinar. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.